Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to determine accurately the incidence of a taxation, the incidence of a subsidy. Okay, because it seems like some students still have problems with interpreting what are the effects of a subsidy. Now, before we visit the case of a subsidy, let's look at how we determine the incidence of a tax. Okay, so a tax raises the production cost, so your supply curve is going to fall. Okay, and given P and Q, okay, you can see that your original equilibrium is here. Okay, this is P1, this is Q1, okay, followed by P2, Q2. Okay, so the total tax is given by the vertical distance between the supply curves. Okay, so total tax is T multiplied by Q2. Okay, the consumer's share is always given by the change in price multiplied by Q2. In other words, a consumer would only know that he or she has been taxed, right, after the market price changes. So you need to take the difference in the price and you multiply by Q2. Okay, so I'm going to shade the consumer share in yellow. Okay, it's here. That means your producer share, is given by 1 minus 2, which gives you this area here. Okay, now before I move on to consider the incidence of a subsidy, I just want to make sure we are clear on one thing, which is even though in this case the demand curve is relatively steep, and you know that if PED is less than 1, your increase in price will lead to a less than proportionate fall in quantity demanded. But please do not conclude that as a result total revenue increases, because some students are inclined to see that before a tax this is the total revenue, and after a tax the total revenue seems to have gone up. This conclusion is wrong, because the effective price that producers get is not P2. Producers effectively get P2 minus T. Because let's not forget, after they collect the revenue, right, from the government, from the consumers, they have to surrender a tax amount per unit sold, to the government. So what they get is P2 minus T. That means with a tax, both producers and consumers will suffer. Okay? Great. So if let's say you are clear on that, let's look at the incidence of a subsidy. So I have a shift in my supply curve. This time around it's a shift to the right, because the subsidy lowers production cost. So if I have a subsidy that shifts my supply to the right, this is P1, Q1, and P2, Q2 is here. Now there's a very large tendency for students, to look at the incidence based on this distance here. Now that is not correct. Why? In considering the incidence of a tax or a subsidy, you should always focus on the new equilibrium quantity, not the old one. The old one is what you see before the subsidy. So with a subsidy, you should always consider from Q2. But students are naturally a bit hesitant to look at the incidence from here, because you're extending a line into blank space, right? So I'll say as a matter of habit, I will always first indicate, there's something wrong here, sorry about that. So I'm always going to indicate the size of the subsidy, as measured from Q2. So now I have one line that extends all the way up. So going back to the same derivation, the total subsidy is S multiplied by Q2, right? This is equation 1. You can see the parallel here. And the consumer share is the change in price multiplied by Q2, which means this is my consumer share. Whereas the producer's incidence, okay, is again 1 minus 2, which leaves me with this amount. Okay. And you can see a clear difference here. All right. In the case of a tax, the consumer share is the one that lies above. All right. Whereas when you have a subsidy, the consumer share is now below. All right. So to make sure you get the derivation right, you have to practice a lot. That's definite. Okay. But you can also refer to the series of steps here in my book. There are 5 steps, okay, to get the incidence right. So we always shift the supply curve unless it's really specified otherwise. You always look at the new equilibrium quantity. Okay, the vertical distance between the supply curves at Q2 is the size of the tax or the subsidy. The consumer share is given by the change in price, and whoever has a steeper curve will have a larger incidence. Or equivalently, whoever has a more gentle curve will have a lower incidence. Okay, so I hope that helps. And as always, if you have questions, feel free to let me know, because I can always do a video and then upload to provide clarification. Okay, you can contact me at that.econstutor, okay, at gmail.com, or you can visit my website, thateconstutor.com. There are loads of other videos out there. Okay, thank